Hi, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Vicki, otherwise known as Heartland Knits, and this is a vlog all about knitting and spinning and sewing and roses. Today we're going to talk a little bit about roses. It's October, and so I thought it would be good to do a kind of a roundup of the 5 best performing roses of the summer 2021. These are not my 5 favorite roses, but just the ones that did the best this year. At the top of the list is Champagne Celebration. It's an easy elegance rose bred by Ping Lim. It's a very pretty white rose. In cooler weather, the buds start out as kind of a peachy color. But this rose just would not stop blooming this year. Even when I tried to stop it from blooming, it kept blooming. When the Japanese beetles moved in, I tried to debud everything so that I didn't have to deal with looking at the beetles, going out to the garden at all. And that rose just, I would turn around and it would be blooming again. Oddly enough, the beetles didn't really bother that rose very much. Maybe because it is not a particularly fragrant rose. But it just would not stop blooming all summer long. Rose number 2 is another on the sort of creamy white kind of spectrum, and that is a David Austin rose called Crocus Rose. I've had this rose for maybe 4 years, I guess 4 or 5. It's a grafted rose, and the year that I put that one and the ones around it, I was running out of room, and so there were several that got a little bit too close together. Plus, on one side of Crocus Rose was a great big peony. And I don't know if it just didn't like the peony or what. It just never did particularly well. It would give me a couple blooms every summer, but that's about it. This year I decided I just really needed the room. I got rid of the big peony and I moved some of the other roses kind of around so that there was more space around everything. And Crocus Rose just really responded, and it grew bigger and had great big flowers, bigger than it's ever had. It looked like roses out of the catalog. So that one did much better than it's ever done before. Number 3 is another David Austin rose, which I've had for at least 5 years. Maybe it's 5 or 6 that my first kind of big batch of Austins I put in. And that is Crown Princess Margareta. I think of her sort of as almost a once bloomer because she gives me a really nice flush in June, and then there might be some roses kind of, later on in the year, but not a big amount. And she kind of wants to grow as a climber. She shoots up, and a lot of Austins do this, shoot up big long canes, and I have over the years tied them up to a trellis, and it looked really pretty when it blooms. But last winter, it wasn't a particularly cold winter, and we had decent snow cover, but the canes that I had tied up this last winter didn't survive. I had to take those down to the ground. The rest of the bush was fine, just the canes that I had tied up onto the trellis. And I don't know if that was the reason behind it doing what it did, or if it was, I gave it the same fertilizer. It was maybe 10 days or so later than usual, because you try to be pretty prompt about giving them fertilizer. As soon as I see dandelions bloom in my yard, they get fertilizer. This year they were late. But anyway, Crown Princess Margareta threw like entire bouquets of flowers on one stem. There was 17 buds on a spray. It's never done that before. So I don't know if it was because it was fertilized at a different point when it was setting buds, or exactly what happened. But it just threw these huge bouquets, and it had numerous ones. and they were just incredibly beautiful. I'd never seen a rose do that before. And you know, again, like most years, it just gave me this huge June flush, and then it had a couple flowers in August, but not a lot. But it growing nice big long stems that I'm tying back up. So number 4 is a real sentimental favorite of mine. It is a second year band, which means it's the second year in my garden. The old saying is the first year they sleep, the second year they creep, and the third year they leap. So this was its sort of creepier, but you would never have known it by how beautiful it looked. Oh, and the rose is a Griffith buck rose called Carefree Beauty. It got to about 3 feet tall, kind of big all around, almost constantly in flower. And this does not surprise me. This is a rose that my mom grew for a long, long time. I think she got one of when it was first introduced. I think it was about 77-ish time frame, and she got one kind of right then. I just remember hers got to be, usually each summer got to be about 5 feet high, and it was always in bloom. And people would write in their Christmas cards all the time about, I love seeing your rose bloom all summer and stuff. So, which is why I got a band of it last year, because I remembered it fondly. And it did not disappoint this year, not in the least. Just beautiful pink roses. Number 5 is also a Griffith buck rose, and this one took me totally by surprise. I got to ordering roses sort of late this year, and the David Austin roses that I wanted to get to add to that bed were all out of stock already, and so I thought, I'm going to get Griffith buck roses. And so the place that I was ordering from, you sort of need to have kind of a minimum kind of quantity for to make the shipping charges worthwhile. And so I needed 5 of the buck roses, and I had a list of ones that I wanted, and except there was one like sort of like, what should I do for my very last one? And I went on a rose forum and looked up just to see if they had, you know, threads about Griffith buck rose. One of them, there was one person who kept saying, Dorcas is the best one. Dorcas, everybody should have it in the garden. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try it. I couldn't really even find like pictures of it online anywhere, but I thought, okay, I will give it a shot. And this rose was so incredibly beautiful. It just took me completely by storm. I didn't know what to expect about it. And it started to bloom, and you know, I'm used to Austin roses with kind of fragile little petals and, you know, thin little leaves. And this rose is like leather. I mean, the petals of the flower are like leather, and the leaves are like leather, and the roses stayed on the little tiny little band for a couple weeks. They stayed on there. Not like my Austin roses that can shatter in a day. This it kept on producing. I hope I don't regret letting it keep produced, but the color of this rose was so beautiful. And it has like a nice little kind of like little freckles in it, which I know some people don't like, but it was bred from, one of his roses was called Freckle Face or Freckles, something with freckles, and that was one of the parents of this rose. And so yeah, this one definitely took me by storm and totally surprised me. So I hope you enjoyed that little tour through my best 5 performing roses of the summer. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, and if you're not already a subscriber, please do go on over and subscribe. And until I see you next time, bye.